Roy, you're a foreclosure expert. Without speaking to the particulars of this case, because I know there are a lot of questions that you'd need answered. I mean, how does one get out of this? You must see this all the time, where people have been short sold. Now the business that they used to rely on has fallen out. The bottom's fallen out of it. In general terms, what can people do?
Well, Josh, first of all, I want to thank you for addressing this particular issue today and giving it a human face. Um, the short sale route and the short sale process is something that's come about because the banks have recognized that systemically the foreclosure route is probably their least likely route for success. When banks foreclose on people's properties, not only do the neighbors' properties suffer, but the banks are horrible, horrible neighbors themselves. They themselves frequently aren't paying the homeowner association dues. They're not cleaning their pools. They're not maintaining their gardens, and basically allowing their homes to become into disrepair and drag down the property values of entire neighborhoods. So then you have a situation like Lee, where she proactively decided to go through a short sale process and then entered into a lease with the folks who purchased the property from her. And now there seems to be a dispute of whether or not they are being honorable and honoring their lease and allowing this important organization to continue to serve the public. And I will add that the equine crisis is not just in California, but really is throughout the United States. We know here in Florida in particular, horses are being literally sent to the slaughterhouse because there is more value to a horse that is dead and is turned into horse meat on the streets in Miami, all illegal, of course, than there is for a horse to be maintained by someone. And it's a crisis that we probably haven't seen since the Great Depression. We probably haven't seen this since the days of the Dust Bowl. This is something that's unheard of in my lifetime. It's unconscionable. And it's a systemic problem that I put at the foot of Wall Street. Now, I know that is not what we're here to talk about today, but I hope, Josh, that in the weeks and months to come, we'll be able to delve further and further into how we got into this crisis in the first place.
Well, that's certainly something that's an ongoing topic of discussion here at HuffPost Live, and we're doing lots and lots of conversations about that. I mean, one conversation that I had recently with John Cusack, actually the actor, is something that he's putting forward. A friend of his has this proposal to use eminent domain to try to reclaim properties that are underwater. Obviously, that doesn't apply in a case like this where the property has already been short sold. But can you think of any other innovative or interesting ways that people can deal with this? I mean, if you were a dictator for a day, what would you do to try to solve the crisis?
That's a wonderful question. If I was a benevolent dictator, I would want to make sure that the judges, in fact, throughout this country would apply the law equally, both to the large banking institutions as well as to the individuals who appear before them, usually without counsel. One of the things that we saw in the robo-signing crisis and the $25 billion settlement that the attorney generals had entered into is that, to a large extent, we saw two sets of laws. One set of laws for the people who control the gold, meaning the banks and Wall Street, and a set of rules and laws that the rest of us had to follow. If I was a benevolent dictator and I was king for a day, I would make sure that the playing field was level and that every law applied to everyone equally. The idea that certain people go to jail for stealing a container of milk from a 7-Eleven, and yet someone can walk into a bank and steal billions and billions of dollars by cheating on LIBOR rates or by cheating on the way they sold securitized trusts to teachers and policemen around the world for their pensions, and to allow them to walk free, yet have someone who stole that container of milk be treated differently, I find to be ironically and systemically unfair.
Oh, I mean, it's a complete moral outrage, but it doesn't actually. But feeling that outrage doesn't help the people like Lee who are in the situation that they're in now. Is there any?
And so, I mean, the first and foremost thing, if we can go back to Lee's situation, I probably would, and I'm not a California lawyer, but certainly here in Florida, we would wanted to have considered defending that foreclosure and looking for every single possible thing that the banks did wrong in handling that loan. And you would be shocked how frequently we find things that are just wrong. And because they're wrong, they may not even have the right to be in court. And if they don't have the right to be in court, then they don't have the right to foreclose. And so this is what I'm talking about. And until recently, the courts just refused to acknowledge the possibility that the banks did not handle their paper properly, that the paper is in fact not properly transferable, that the transfers were done through fraud, that the transfers were done through plagiarism, that the transfers were done by people signing affidavits that were illegal, the transfers were done by notaries who weren't notaries. I mean, I can go on. The list is just unbelievable. We've seen it all here. And I will say that at least in Florida, we have finally seen a situation where the judges now recognize that they may have been sold a bill of goods as judges and that they were believing the stuff that the banks were bringing to them, because it was inconceivable to them that these venerable institutions on Wall Street and their lawyers could possibly have pulled the wool over them time and time and time again. And so what we're now seeing, at least in some cases, is the courts are starting to take a real look at the foreclosures and determine if they're being done properly and fairly. And so in Lee's case...
Sorry, go on.
And so in Lee's case, and again, I haven't seen any of the documentation, so I don't want to second guess this, but a short sale is a great process to get out and extricate yourself if, in fact, you're going to be facing a deficiency. But remember, most people in California, if it's their primary residence, aren't facing a deficiency because you're in a state that is a non-judicial foreclosure state. So in those states, you have nothing to lose to fight. In other states where you are a judicial foreclosure state, because you do have the judges, and if you do fight, you could end up suffering from a deficiency, but in most cases that doesn't happen anyway.
Lee,